13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
Bill, man, that was fun. We just got done interviewing Andreas Lopez. I know him very well. I work with him regularly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. Probably, I don't know. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. If you did, then it's going to be a great one for you.
Yeah, it was really neat to hear somebody that was a close friend or acquaintance to you that you know very well. That was a nice change of pace. And yeah, super interesting dude. Really diverse background, I guess. And yeah, it was super, like I said, interesting.
Oh yeah, fascinating guy. Super. I'd call him a project management scholar. Super interested. I've got a project management book that I borrowed from him that that's next on my list that I'm itching to read. So yeah, I don't know. I work with him and it's just,
You get to see a different angle or a different view learn a different facet of
well, no, it's great because I get to see how he attacks and problem solves and goes about doing things at work all the time. And so I thought it would be really interesting to see him address these questions. And we've talked about this podcast, a multitude of times, but it was really fun because when I asked him to be on the show, he's like, well, what are the questions? I'm like, oh, you don't know the questions yet. Okay. And he's like, wow, those are deep. I'm like, okay, good. So it did not disappoint for me on this episode. I know that one of the things we got into a lot about actually, made me realize that I like to solve problems. I used to think that, not that I liked conflict, but I always had a hard time contextualizing why I found it to be fun or engaging and exciting to get into confrontational situations and de-escalating them or, situations in which you need to de-escalate, but it's problem solving. It's high level problem solving. And it was very cool just to kind of, to have that label to be put onto something. And, so yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with that, but, it was fascinating. It's really cool when you can kind of get like a word or a label that can describe something. You can kind of put it in a box and contextualize it. And I don't know, that, it was a benefit to me. Plus, right. I learned a lot about him, which is crazy because I know so much about him already. So I hope you guys enjoy a deep dive into the way that Andreas thinks.
Yeah, the whole problem solving answer was not one I was expecting for that question in the interview. So that's not one I had heard before. So that was neat.
Yeah, no, that one took me by surprise, but it was great to just kind of see it loop back on myself and be like, yeah, no, like I see that. That's a great point of view, a great way to frame a situation, especially when problems come about, because problems by definition, it's a problem. Is it going to bother you? Well, okay. It's a hurdle, so maybe I can jump the hurdle. Well, if I'm jumping hurdles, then that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Let's get to the other side. So I don't know. I just like the idea of solving the problem because what are you doing? You're solving. And if you enjoy the solve, then it's not really a problem. It's part of, the motivation and what you're doing. And I don't know, just that, that frame of mind can just change what you're doing. Are you swimming in the ocean against the currents or are you swimming across the Atlantic?
Yeah. And then if you can help someone along the way, that's even better.
So yeah, so all in all, I love this episode from an interviewing standpoint. So hope you guys enjoy it as well.
Let's do the gratitude section.
Sure.
Then, yeah.
What? Oh, what am I saying? I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm
too excited.
I'm too excited. I forgot to.
So full of gratitude.
I am full of Sir Felix Ortega. And by the way, a huge shout out to Sir Felix. His music is stinking awesome. If there's a Grimerica jingle that's stuck in your head, there's like an 80% chance it's from him. And if this one isn't stuck in your head, you're just not human. I don't get it.
Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude.
Lord himself, Sir Felix.
Thank you, Felix.
Knighted by the Queen of England herself in my imagination.
So I've got one that I'm ready to talk about. It's pretty simple, but I think it's a good example of how when doing gratitudes, you can just pick a little thing. It doesn't really have to be a big thing. But mine today was gloves, work gloves. I was outside doing some yard work before recording tonight, and there's a certain type of weed that grows. It's really prickly, and if you cut it, it gets like white sap pours out, and if you get it on your skin, it irritates your skin. It's just horrible. So, and apparently they decided to invade my front yard. So I was out there picking weeds with my gloves, and it was keeping me from getting pricked. So just the little things sometimes make a big difference, and sometimes maybe we forget to think about those things. So yeah, just a little small one, or not small one, but you know what I mean. For me this time, gloves.
I like it. I'm grateful for systems of support. If you think about Angie and I have just how do I put this? If something happens, right? Somebody has a heart attack, you can call 911, right? Angie, she needs to go for a procedure. We can find a hospital. We can find a clinic. If you need to have, your kid go to school and learn something, there's a system that's set up for that. There's all these tools and things that we have built in that just help and benefit people, and they're all around. And you don't see those, but just having, healthcare systems and, social systems, even just things like the internet and the ability to self-school and universities and free public libraries, these things that we have come together and put together, to try to benefit us as a whole and to bring so that everybody can have it. And if you look at where we were, with having those supportive structures and systems and information, 200 years ago, I mean, nowhere near. So I think it's wonderful, because if you're not constantly thinking about all those systems that are helping people and helping keep them up and running, whether it's be, the pipe and the plumbing that's run under every single person's house, and the wiring and electricity that had to be strung all the way across to set up the system that just allows everything from being able to survive in the winter, to purify your air or run a nebulizer, or play your video games, or, go to university online. So, I don't know. It's just an appreciation for everything that's been done to create these systems that we can all use, benefit, access, and, put us in a place that, through our very, daily exposure and, I don't know if jaded's the right word, but just, you get used to it over time. You don't appreciate what you have. It's kind of like I forget who I heard say this, but it was a farmhouse, and they were looking out at like the horizon, and there was just a light pole or a power line. And the younger guy was saying to this person, like, it's a shame that they put the power line right there. It just ruins the sunset. And the other person's going, no, don't you see it? Like, before that, we didn't have electricity. We didn't have power. When I see that. And so it's just a completely different perspective on the same event and situation. So I don't know. It's what I'm grateful for that. It's what I'm grateful for, Bill.
Yeah, it's always nice to take a step back and appreciate where we are and what we have available to us. Like, if you're listening to a podcast, chances are, you're probably doing, you have electricity, right? So
yeah. So it's just kind of, that wonderful, they appreciated that aspect so much. So yeah, I mean, that's a system that they didn't have. It cuts you off, but now we're so used to it. Power lines, right? Well,
Mhm.
what else is there surrounding you? Is it, access to the internet? Is it the radar waves that are able to give you the weather that are coming down from outer space, or the communication, to satellites up and down that allows your internet, your cable, global communications, GPS? There's so many systems upon systems, that are going on, your sewage system, your drainage system, the transportation system, the trash system, the medical systems. And I don't know why I'm getting caught up in this now, but it's, even when you go to the store, the supply chains and all the products, these are just things to sit around and benefit, because there could be a world in which those things don't exist. And, to see their complexity and how they work, and, all the time that's gotten us to get there, I don't know. I'm grateful for it. And I'm grateful for the perspective.
Yeah, they're all working together, cooperation. That's something that came up in in the interview, and it just works out. It's it's amazing. Yeah.
Well, that's it's a pretty long episode, Bill. So I don't know if you want to kind of start diving right into this.
Yep,
I don't know
let's
if you
do
have
it.
anything else. If you want to contact the show, 13 Questions Podcast at gmail.com, 13questionspodcast.com.
Yep. All the links will be in the show note for the socials. And if you like what you hear and you want to support us, we have that option available too on our website. We are value for value. So if you'd like to throw us however much you feel is appropriate, a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Or, just spread the word. Like Bill said, it's value for value. And we value you guys so much. We appreciate all the support that you give us. And, it means so much. Send us guests. If you enjoyed this guest, this is somebody I personally know in my life. And, I thought he'd be good for the show. So if you know that person, go ask them. Send me their name. Send me their information. Send it to Bill. Support the show. Help it grow. Let us reach out and find those connections that we're not able to make, because everybody has wisdom and things that are shared, and it comes from eons of people being around and passing it down through family generations. So you are a library of wisdom of the people who managed to survive that came before you. You may think you're weak and you don't have that knowledge, but believe me, because you are here means that you do. So find that interesting person and reach out to us. Heck, maybe it's you.
Yeah, I love suggestions. It makes my job a little bit easier to find guests. So
Well,
send them
and
my way.
and you guys are going to find people that Bill's not. Bill's looking in his
Exactly.
worldview, his interest, all the fingers that he has out that he can see. You're going to pull somebody out of left field strictly because there's too many people in the world for us to be in everybody's socials and worldviews. So, find the person that's interesting, kick them our way, and think it'll be good, because they are. They always are.
Yeah, but if nothing else, at least share the show.
Share the show. And we do it because you're there, and we appreciate all of your support. So thank you for your donations. You guys are wonderfully charitable. Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy the chat.
With Andreas Lopez. All right, welcome to 13 Questions.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm happy to be here and share a little bit of my walk of life, and looking forward to what you guys have for me.
Nice. Well, then let's just jump on in and start with the first question. Andreas, what was the best advice ever given to you, and would you modify it at all today?
That was a tough question to begin with. I would say the best advice would be, do not change yourself for others. And that's a little bit of a tough, flat advice. What I would change on it is don't change yourself against your will for others, because even a positive change is change. Like you're a different person, you become a better person. And you shouldn't try to fit in somewhere where you don't feel comfortable. Classic scenario, like in middle school, high school, peer pressure environments of certain brands you should be wearing, certain things you should like certain music that's popular right now. But it's like you shouldn't follow that stuff. And you shouldn't try, for example, in a professional career, to be in a role you don't like just because the company needs it, because you want to be a company man. You should stay true to yourself. And that is probably some of the best advice I've heard more than once throughout my life from different people, including my dad, including certain teachers that supported me in like my final 3 years of school, and even some peers and friends. And like typically at like the graduation party and stuff like that, it's like, you know what? Don't change. And of course, since then, I changed. It has been 10, 12 years since then. But I always strive for improvement and staying true to myself, as I said earlier. Like that is like the top advice I've been given in my life.
No, I like that. That's nice. It's nice to get that advice from your parents at such a young age on something like that.
Yeah, my dad is very old school, and he was always one of the wiser people when he wanted to share his wisdom. And he wasn't much in my life because of his profession. So I guess I took his words more serious and his advice more serious than some other people might from their parents, just because the parents are around all the time. So my dad, when I was growing up, was like most of the time only weekends at home, and like during some summer break vacations he took for us. And so I guess his words just hung heavier because they were more rare.
I like your addendum, the against your will, the part that you would change, because to me that speaks to kind of like peer pressure and not being, not being pressured by your peers, and not going along with the crowd just to go along. And I don't know, somebody brings up a quote. I forget who said it. I think I have an idea, but I don't want to guess on this one, so I'm not going to say. But culture is not your friend. So being peer pressured, I don't know. Maybe I'm just going too deep onto that, but yeah.
What do you choose to ignore?
Wow. If you asked me about a month or two ago, I would have given you a different answer probably. But more recently, really like bad news. Like bad news from almost any source. Friends, like online friends mostly, that I've been hung around a lot with. Like COVID really affected a lot of people I know. And then also newspapers, also local stuff. And I've been really trying to push out like that. I guess I call it black noise compared to white noise, because it's like it's not depressing, but it's negative energy that I started pushing away from my life, because there are a few hardships that I'm going through right now. My wife is pregnant. She has bronchitis for a couple weeks now, actually months. And so there's like more stress for me in the household. And it's like, I don't have time to worry about problems I can't fix. Like if there's some local issues where people got, into accidents, they got mugged or robbed, or on national news, like there was another shooting. It's like I don't have control over it. I can't change those people to have a better experience, to be more positive, to help them out. So I'm like, okay, why am I even worrying about them? And that's not me being cold-hearted. That's me being like I'm still listening to friends that I normally exchange with. I give them advice. I'm like, hey, you gotta look at the bright side, because remember, you might have lost a job, but you never liked it to begin with anyway. Probably you're gonna find something better now. That sort of thing. I'm really trying to push out negative energy out of my life, unless I know I can help, and then I lend my hand where I can. Because if you care too much about everything in the world, it starts draining you, and when you're drained, you can't help others anymore. You're becoming so overloaded, so overburdened, that it might paralyze you one way or another, be it mental stress, be it starting even in physical symptoms like stress related headaches and stuff like that. And then once your capacity starts dropping, it's like you can't be as helpful as you might want to be. So most like global issues, stock market issues, all that sort of high level stuff that I can't do anything about, I'm just ignoring that, pushing that out of my life, and be like, I gotta prioritize what's important to my friends, family, my inner circle, basically, and how can I help them? That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate anybody that's aware of the boundaries of where their their personal sphere of influence is, and like what you can affect, and like what you should really be focusing on in your life. Like I do the same thing, like bad news, like most news in general now, actually. But so yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, the personal sphere of influence, very important. And you gotta pick your battles, right?
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. What book has been most influential on your life, and why?
So I'm going to bring a book into the light here that almost nobody knows. And funny enough, I don't remember the exact title. I want to say it got published like in the 80s, maybe 90s. And it's called, I believe, The Book of Two Souls. And it's very interesting from a philosophical point of view. It basically tries to break down that certain human needs are built on this duality of souls. It describes how each soul born into the world basically is actually two parts of the same soul. And that's why we have this feeling of we need to find a soulmate. Like why is this such a big thing in our culture? Back then, even like if you think Greek mythology, Romans, Egyptians, like there was always this somebody looking for this other part of themselves. It has been shown through history, time after time. And even now, like all these romance comedy movies or rom-coms in short, um, TV shows like Friends and other sitcoms, it's like it's this persistent pattern that we also pursue in everyday life of this, like there's this person out there that is the perfect partner for us. And it tries to explain that concept goes actually further if you're open to that kind of spiritual belief outside of normal religion. And the fascinating part is that after I read it, it's like, oh, I experienced this with my wife because I met her online when I was 16 years old. And it's like, most people would say, like, okay, you're 16 years old. How can you tell it's your soulmate? It's like, I don't know. And at the start, it wasn't romantic out of the box. Like, it was later on, like about 2 years later, it's like, I think I love you. Like, always happy around that person, like online when chatting and stuff, um, doing, you know, posting in communities online where we met. and just sharing ideas, preferences, learning more about another. And before you know it, all our like personal lifestyle goals aligned almost perfectly, from having to want exactly 2 kids to the way how the wedding should be. We discussed that for fun very early on. And the book describes how each soul is divided into a feminine and a male soul. And it also talks about the topic of reincarnation in an interesting way. It basically describes that not everybody is bound to find a soulmate in that life cycle. Sometimes a soul needs to go through multiple lives until they're ready to meet their soulmate. But the most fascinating thing I want to say is it very specifically said that you would never find your soulmate if your life is not in a condition where it would hurt somebody else. So imagine you're married and it's like, this is kind of not working out. But like you have kids, you're working on it, you're trying to figure it out. And then let's say you meet this amazing other person. That would never happen. That other amazing person would be temptation, not your soulmate. If it was your soulmate, the life would be more aligned to where it would be clear. Like, let's say you're already talking divorce, you're already thinking about it, you're in this conversation, it's already like happening. And then meeting that soulmate when the conditions are right, only then you will meet that. And it's not so much a rule book as much as it's a guide. And the amazing thing is, it's one of those books that also says, you know what? If you find somebody that you really align with, but you don't have romantic feelings with, it might be part of, I forget what they described it in the book, but basically described it as like an inner sphere of souls, like a soul group, where it's like you guys are in the same circle, and in the circle can be multiple souls that are very familiar to each other, that are very close to each other in terms of mentality, of personal beliefs, and even maybe ethics, morality, and spiritual beliefs. And so it's like, but wait, just because you really, really, really like somebody, that doesn't mean they're your soulmate or that they might be more. Maybe they are just destined to be like friends along your life and you walk the same path. And by the end of the day, that once your life is fulfilled, similar to the Buddhist beliefs, that you will reach this higher life form, this higher sphere of existence, so to speak. And as like a community of souls, you will continue to exist in the universe and create and affect like the living. And it's just a really fascinating book. Was very progressive for the time it was written in. And I would love to share, if I can find it, like with you guys. I know I recommended it to you, Adam. I recommended that to you before, but I know you're busy with a lot of other books.
Yeah, if we find it, we will drop it there in the show notes. But I do want to make a comment here, because I find it just the way that you put that, because the advice is very similar just to like old other sage advices, where it's kind of like, look, things are going to happen when you're least expecting them to, when things are right. It's kind of like that. It's like, look, the conditions are going to be right, and only then can it happen. So it's these kind of things that go along with kind of like a Murphy's Law. And so, yeah, I kind of like that. It just kind of speaks to these cycles of just how things happen and how things are. And here's a way to interpret it and maybe take advantage of that cycle.
I would agree with that. That sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah, if you do find the book again, drop it in Discord for sure. These are subjects that I'm super into.
How old were you? Oh, sorry, Bill.
The whole thing with the Soul Tribe. Like, have you heard of Twin Flames at all?
No, I haven't.
It's it's akin to soulmates, but it's like a step up, I guess you would say. I don't. So yeah. So these topics are definitely something I'm into. So please share the book if you can. And then yeah, soul tribes. We actually had a guest on the show that told Adam and I that we knew each other in like past life. So if we're talking about soul tribes, like that's, I don't know, that to me is an example of one. And by doing the show, I would, I think I would agree.
I mean, I like the idea. Like that's a pretty good term, soul tribe. I like that myself.
How old were you when you read the book?
Ooh, I know I was here in the United States because I borrowed it from the library here in West Palm Beach. How old was I? Probably like 20, maybe 21.
So how did you come across that book? I'm interested because that seems like an odd one unless it's recommended to you that you would just get from the library.
Okay, this is where the story gets weird, I guess, but I'm glad that you're asking it. So, I was in this phase of my life where I wanted to be like, oh, you know what? I go to the library, I get some books, I read them just for fun because my wife got more into reading. I was like, damn, I want to read too. Like just seeing her chill on the couch, it's like I got a little bit jealous. It's like I need books, but it's like I didn't have a lot of money back then. Only had a part-time job, being recently migrated over here to the States. So I went to the library and then I went you know what, let me go through like these philosophical books because I always was into ethics, religion, spirituality. I always was into that, fascinated from it since I was like 14 years old. And like the book stood out to me. It was a thin book and said something about two souls, and it's like a guide to find your soulmate. And I'm like, you know what? I just recently moved to the US. I left my home country of Germany behind. I came here, I lived here for a year or two. I want to know, did I do the right thing? And as I was reading the book, I'm like, that's exactly describing how I felt about my wife. It was so weird. It was like as if somebody took our story or like even my emotions, what I went through with our relationship, and wrote it down in a book. That's how it felt. I just grabbed it. I read the book cover and the description on the back, and I was grabbed. I was like, yeah, I want to learn more about this theory. And so I got it from the library and read it, and then I returned it.
So you intuited which book to pick up, essentially.
Pretty much. I feel like more like it picked me than the other way around.
No, I actually like this. It's going to sound like a weird connection, but there's some detectives out there that use a form of remote viewing they call blinking, where they'll just go to a crime scene while they're investigating and say, with the intention, when there's going to be something that's important that I need to see, a piece of evidence, I'll blink. And when they notice themselves blink, they go to that spot. So they're using just this thing. Well, you're sitting there with this thought and this feeling about where you're at, and you need this. And, that's awesome that you're able to just narrow in on what's meaningful and needed. That's a cool thing to be able to use intent for, however it's done.
Yeah. And I mean, the only intent I had, since we're talking about that, is I walked into library wanting to be like, I want a book I can enjoy reading. And I guess the universe gave something that, stuck for me with life. I don't think I'm ever going to forget that book.
Very cool. What rule do you have for yourself that you never break, and why do you think that it is important?
Ooh. So those rules that I set in the past for myself, I don't think there's any one rule that survived the trial of time and growing up. Right now, that rule probably would be going back to my best advice, which is like keeping it real. Like, do not bend to anybody else. Like pretty much if somebody expects me to change in a way I don't want to be, a person I don't want to be, I'm like, no. Either you accept me for who I am and my actions and what I do and my moral compass, or screw off. Like I'm not going to be somebody I'm not for nobody. And that even includes like my wife and my kid. It's like I'm not gonna pretend to be somebody I'm not. And I don't see myself breaking that. And that might be the one thing that might survive the trial of time. There is a balance of like not being a jerk and being nice when you are angry, just to get, the resolution you desire. To not, like, once you start yelling at somebody, I mean, expect to get yelled at back, right? And it's like, other than that, I'm not going to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. I I was never good at that. The moment I start lying to myself, where I can't believe the lie, if let's say you just have to believe yourself, lying to yourself for the sake of the outcome, that's one thing. But every time I go like against what my intuition tells me and that's the core of my personality, I feel this heavy weight on me, like not quite sorrow, but like disappointment in myself. I'm like, why am I doing this for somebody else? It's my life, it's my person. I don't have to change for anybody except for myself. If I'm wrong, I will change, I will become a better person, but I'm not gonna bend over for anybody else. Like, I won't.
Have you always been that way?
No. And I think that's why I started making that decision. Back then, throughout my school life, from first grade through vocational school in Germany, so pretty much like 13 years of school in total, I was more or less always the outsider to one level or another, because I looked at the world more simplistic and more real and less like very black and white. There was not much of a gray zone for me back in the day, and that just made me not a very good friend in school, I guess, because it's like people were like, "Hey, you want to play basketball?" I'm like, "No, I suck at it. I won't play with you." And of course, people were like, "Oh, he's a sour lemon. I don't want to play with that guy." And so I was a very outsider person, and I tried to adapt to some degree on that. For example, I hated mathematics, but I knew the other kids were struggling like in 7th, 8th, 9th grade and so on. A little bit with it too. And I started to be a little bit more buddy-buddy. And even though I had a really good grasp on it, I was always like the top 5 people. Sometimes, like when it didn't matter during class compared to the test, I acted sometimes a little bit more stupid to kind of appear like I'm on the same level as my peers, to be intentionally not like the smart ass who always knows everything. And it didn't really help, because at some point my math teacher was like, how come you're doing so great on a test and then during class you're just like kind of like blanking out? I'm like, I'm pretending. And it's like, it's not a good feeling. They're like, why? And I'm not even sure if that's where I started, that peer pressure is stupid, or like trying to fit in is like a silly concept. But there's more examples of similar things, similar with video games. I've been playing, and that's where I learned English actually when I was young. According to my older brother and my father, I started playing when I was like 4 years old with like a Commodore 64. And when I got older and we played a lot of video games like Super Nintendo, N64, later on GameCube, PlayStation 1, 2, and so on in school, and like we had like friends over, or I went to their house, like I played intentionally worse than I was capable of, because I had an older brother that's 5 years older than me. He beat me at Mortal Kombat, Soul Calibur, and all that stuff all day, every day. And so naturally my skill level was that of somebody 5 years older than me. So most of my friends only had them to play with. And so I could whoop their ass, but like not to be upset like I felt like playing against my older brother. I played intentionally worse to make them feel good and like lose intentionally. And like that never felt good. And now thinking back, I'm like, why even bother? Like, it's not like they suddenly became my friends. Instead of like, in your face, I beat you. You know, it's like, in the meanwhile, I'm in my head like, yeah, I could wipe the floor with you.
No, isn't that great though? Because your brother just beat you senseless in the games and it made you a way, way, way better player. So you took the same thing and said, well, I don't want to beat you senseless. So I'm ultimately, you're not going to be a way better player either.
Yeah, it's ironic how it's basically holding you back to a level.
Yeah, you were trying to do the opposite of what you got. But hey, it really speaks to just being able to see that and change that trait. Go, all right, well, this isn't working. I tried it, so abandon. Like a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people, keep doing the duck and run.
Yeah, I see definitely that people getting often caught up in these cycles, for lack of better word, and not seeing that the results are not what they desire, and then the lack of being like, you know what, let me change something. And the irony is, once I hit like my vocational school, um, there was like 5 or 6 of us that really enjoyed StarCraft 2 when it came out, and we were playing it, some of us competitively online. And we made like a mini league between of us and like some friends that weren't in school that we knew from past other schools. So we were in a total of like 6 to 8 people, and we made like a mini league that we organized between of us. And at that point, I had already abandoned, like, I'm not gonna pretend I'm worse than I am. And I gave it my best, and I still lost. But I wasn't like on the bottom, I was in the middle. And some like fan like the following, because it was like during one of the mini vacations we have in Germany, like fall break or whatever for a week. We did it during that time. And when we came back from that vacation and went to school and be like, Andreas, I didn't think you would be that good. Like, that was impressive. And ironically, because I beat my peers and some of them senselessly, because like I just outsmarted them, or I just knew their typical strategy and I just totally countered it, even though they're usually really good players. I gained respect in turn, and it was weird. And the guy who won, we were like all cheering for him. And I'm like, wait. If I all those years ago beat all my friends in school, I would have gotten respect. Like, it's weird. Like, but once I broke that pattern of trying to lose intentionally, and I gave it my best, I got actually more respect than if I gave them the satisfaction of winning. It's so counterintuitive.
You got to get out of your own head sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, is it counterintuitive though? Because like is competition supposed to be that ingrained in like humans, right? Or
the competition I would agree with. I mean, otherwise sports wouldn't be more watched than music and movies and everything else. I mean, sports is most watched ever, anything. But the counterintuitive part for me is that if you really beat somebody and you both gave your best, that the other guy can be like shaking your hand, be like, that was impressive. Because my experience before was when I got just beat senselessly, is even though I gave my best and I kind of knew I couldn't win, but I still tried, I just felt bad afterwards. So I don't know if I became a better loser, because like a lot of people say, you gotta be a good loser before you can be a good winner, right? I'm not sure what happened in the difference. All I can say is like that was a difference that I personally noticed.
If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most? Why?
My tone. I come off, according to a lot of people, as brash or aggressive. there's a good incident this morning where I asked a coworker about why they were doing a certain task that we just agreed on about a week ago that they're not supposed to do anymore, not to that extent. And it's like, why in the phones? You should be like in the warehouse organizing, and like we just talked about this. And I assume my tone was that of the German drill sergeant, and was a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too much energy, and it might have sounded negative and bad, and me like yelling and reprimanding. While in the meanwhile, I was actually just curious, like, "Hey, what's going on?" kind of thing. And that is not the only instance. There is a lot of it where I come off with my high energy, just, I'm like in this mood of, I won't get stuff done. And fan, I'm just curious, and I don't know how to dial that energy down. I'm like, hey, why don't you give me a hand? It's like, in the meanwhile, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, hey, could you please assist me here? And so it doesn't always translate well with my tone of voice, with my verbiage maybe, compared to my intention.
Well, I think I understand in a way. I know a lot of it's good. I don't want to classify you as German, but but Germans have a different way of thinking. So, you're thinking in a certain way and it's translating into English in a different way. And if you translate it into German and we had that side of the understanding, it makes sense. So, yeah, you might be more drill sergeant, but you're just quicker to the point and more direct, with less dilly-dallying and emotions. That's not bad.
My prime example of that, of like the American versus German culture, is one of the weirdest things. When I came to the States first, is like people ask you, hey, how are you? But the funny thing is, Americans actually don't expect a response. So before I can even say like, I'm doing good, they're like already on to the next thing. It's like, why do you ask me how are you if you don't actually care or want to reply? And the funny thing is, I still reply every time any American asks me like, how are you? I'm like, I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. How are you? And it's like, they don't expect that. It's just like a formal thing you ask, even though you don't really want an answer. It's just this weird ritual, like this normal greeting thing. In the meanwhile, in Germany, it's just like, good morning. And we get onto the thing. We don't ask like, hey, how are you doing? Or if somebody asks that, we actually expect to care and be like, oh, okay, I get it. You're not feeling well today. Too bad. Okay, let's get on to the point. But here in America, it's like people just ask, how are you? And it's like, do you want me to actually answer that?
Yeah, I also think that's weird, and I'm American. Like, I'll answer back, and then ask them too, and catch them off guard. So, yeah, I think it's
the best thing about it is if you make straight eye contact and they have that face of confusion. It's like, why are you asking me back?
Yeah, they're definitely not expecting it.
You just need to answer back with something completely random, like I am a canary, and see if they actually catch on or just move on.
Or both. They notice it, make a weird face, and then move on.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Problems. Like in my bio, that I'm a project manager, I love problems. There is nothing more satisfying than simplifying something really complicated, or just straight up finding the solution to this problem that people are having one way or another, be it within a workflow at work, be it a challenge in real life, like, oh my God, I need to remodel my room. It's like, oh, what's the best way to do it? Or I need tool X, Y, and Z. I can't find it. I don't even know if it exists. It's like this idea I have of what I need. And I just love solving problems. It's inherited into me, and I blame video games because especially old school RPGs. Think of the first like Final Fantasies and stuff like that. You walk into a village, you talk to people, and everybody's complaining about something like, this dude in the black robe came in, and now like all the people are sick. Like, what the hell? Other people might be complaining that their king or prince got turned into a frog. It's like, how do we fix this? And the funny thing is, those video games always have like the whole world is basically not moving unless you do something, right? It needs your interaction. And they don't do anything about the problem. They're just sitting there complaining. But it's so realistic that since I've become a project manager and working more on projects at work, it's like I see a lot of people complaining like about workflows. And it's like, you're the only one doing that task. So if you're complaining about the workflow, why don't you just change it? And the most common answer is, it's not my responsibility. It's so confusing to me because it's so inherited into my DNA to fix things and optimize them. Again, I don't know if that's like part of my German background, because like you said, Adam, like we are just really straight to the point and making things like simple and direct. It's like, I don't get this chain of command being an issue. It's like, no, you're working with this workflow. So if you see issues, just fix them or report them to the person that is, according to you, responsible for it and get it fixed. And the best thing about solving problems is you make somebody's day. Like they become so energized, so happy. It's like, wait, you listened to my problem, you addressed it, you found a solution, and you made my life better. Like, this is amazing. And so I try to apply a lot of the project management stuff I learned and every day and in different situations. These days there's a lot of also emotional intelligence involved becoming a project manager, because people is what causes problems. I mean, imagine a company without employees, there would be no problems, right? Because there's no company. So the more people you have, the more problems you get typically. And so it's interesting to just be able to listen to people, see their problem, and then be like, well, let's find a solution. And the most interesting about the pursuit of a solution is that even if you encounter the same problem again, the solution might be different because some of the conditions are different. Personal conflict is a good example. Like, you have two people that are arguing. Well, you can't just be like, well, I'm going to separate you two, or I'm going to put you in one department, you in one department, so you never see each other again. And you're just going to figure it out because clearly it's a personal conflict. But sometimes you can't separate people, or there's another issue at hand. Maybe they're just frustrated and angry at other people because there's things outside of work affecting them. Like, they have household issues, right, with their family. Maybe something bad has happened. Maybe they have a sickness. Maybe they got injured recently from an accident or something. And so now they bring this negative energy to work and let it out on others. Other times it might be that the workflow or like the company environment is toxic, and that's why they're pissed and let it out on others. Sometimes it might be because they don't let it out and it just kind of like let it simmer inside of them. So just really fixing problems, it turns me on probably across the board in life. Today, I ordered some glue a couple days ago. So like instant glue for repairing toys, basically, because my kid broke like 2 or 3 toys, and it's like I didn't have any super glue that would endure his definition of playing with toys. And they came in the box, and I opened it, and he saw it was glue. He was like, "Oh my God, my glue came!" Like, kind of like in his toddler speech. So we had accumulated all his broken toys and the pieces in a certain container. He immediately went to run there, grabbed them, and dumped them on me, and was like, "There, fix it." And like, I was like, a little bit like, you're such a jerk and selfish, but at the same time, it's like, after I fixed those and they cured and he could play with them again, he was as happy as a clam. And like, that's the things that make me happy. Like, I solved this little guy's issues because he couldn't fix it himself.
You know, I know you very well, and I never realized that's the perfect word, problem, because I identify that really closely. I've always said that I don't know how to describe it, but I like conflict because it's high level chess to me with dealing with another person trying to de-escalate a situation. But really what it is it's a problem and it's solving the problem. And that makes sense why we work so well together. That's a really good thing, because a lot of people will run into those things and see exactly that. Your kid dumping stuff on you, or the things that you're doing at work, or just whatever you're doing, those tasks that seem to be a problem, right? But really it's finding the solution. And if your joy is in working through the problem, then ultimately it's not really a problem or it is, but you turn it into not. I don't know. That's pretty cool. It's a great perspective. I'm stealing that for myself.
Go ahead, take it.
What is the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
Wow. I am not sure, to be honest. Probably that has to go. You know what? I know what. Vocational school graduation ceremony. My math teacher was also a class teacher, and when he had my diploma, he like, they didn't do really speeches for a lot of people except like the top of the class. And he started off with, when Andreas first started taking his, like, you guys would call it pop quiz. We actually have like proper formal tests. Andreas started with 5s. So in Germany, we have a grading system from 1 through 6. 1 is being like basically A, and 6 being F. So basically 5 is like, I guess, like a D minus, or like a D, I guess, would be appropriate. So when Andreas first started taking his test in math, he was at like D minus. In those 2 years, even though he struggled a lot, he worked hard and ended up going with the grade into the exam with a C, which was a 3.0. And just so you guys understand, in the vocational school, the exam is 50% of your grade. So whatever you accumulated for the year, and let's say you do an A in the exam, like that is 50% of your grade. So you would take your entry level grade that's accumulated from all the tests for the year, so a C, on Germany 3.0. From the exam, let's say it's a 1, so it would take 1 plus 3 divided by 2. So your final grade would be a 2.0. So I started with basically 5.0, and in like my very first test in the very first year, and from by the end of the second year, I managed to get, and as a grading entry into the exam, with a 3.0. He highlighted that even though I struggled, I worked my butt off to get there. And then on top of that, got another 3.0 in the exam. And it was weird for me. I never got this highlight or anything. And like pretty much like everybody's ceremony, which was like, with all the students and the parents of those that chose to come, it was maybe in this big hall, it was like 100 people, including like all the other teachers and like the principal and stuff like that. And they all like turned towards me because I was standing there as he was talking about me, because he called me by my name, right? And like all eyes were on me, and like it was weird. And then like when I walked up and I grabbed my diploma, like everybody started clapping, and I'm like what? Just because like I really worked hard on myself, because I sucked at math on that advanced level. Like we did a lot of stuff, and I forgot probably all of it by now. But it was very difficult. I struggled. I never struggled in school like that. And I studied probably like 2 to 4 hours a day, like 3-4 times a week. I took the additional math support classes. I got more or less private tutoring from our best guy in math in class. And like by the end of everything, me working my ass off in vocational school, I finished as the second best guy out of like 50 people. And there was another highlight he mentioned. And it was weird. It was like I felt embarrassed to a degree, but also humbled by like to receive that speech, because like all the other people before me were like, let's say like Martin, this, that, and the third, here's your diploma, right? And then suddenly this speech, it's like nobody prepped me for that. It's like, what's happening right now? Why is he talking about me? Why is this going on for 5 minutes? Just let me walk up there, grab this thing, and sit down. And like, it was weird. And I never had that attention, and like it shook me to my core. I don't know how else to describe it.
You were recognized openly for something that you worked very, very hard for and didn't expect. That's kind of weird, right? It's a positive airing of your dirty laundry in a floodgate unexpectedly at a moment when you're already nervous that you're going to trip up on stage. You're not even thinking about anything else. You're thinking about
that is kind of also what happened. I almost took the chair with me as I got up and walked up there.
Oh, that's...
So all eyes already were on me, so I get up, I kind of start walking, and almost like the chair falls as I get up, and it's like, oh shit.
Well, that's great. Yeah, listen, I it seems to be something that have impacted you, because I never would have guessed that you were not good at math. You seem to have such an aptitude for it. So
it's
congrats,
because
sir.
Yeah. If we want to go a little bit into it, it's because in 10th grade I really sucked, and pretty much all the math we learned in 10th grade was like the foundation for vocational school. So because I kind of flunked in 10th grade, which was like my worst school year ever, it's like, hey, look, I don't have any of the foundation I need to succeed here. Like, well, no wonder I suck. That was all on me, but hey, it's never too late to change the course, apparently.
'Tis true. 'Tis true. There's always a path that you can choose. You can always just turn left wherever you're at.
Yeah.
What is your greatest fear? How did you overcome it?
I did not quite overcome it, but instead of fear, I'm now at respect. And that's the fear of heights. And I know everybody makes the joke like, oh, you're afraid of heights. Oh, no, you're going to stand in front of a mountain and start screaming. No, of course, it's like the falling from heights and other stuff. Though I have reasonable reasons to be afraid of heights. One of them is when I was like 12, I want to say. I had a bad fever and I was too stubborn, and against my mom's direction, I still want to go to school. And I tumbled down the stairs because I got dizzy because I was feverish, so I tumbled down the stairs. But I was afraid of heights before that already, but I think that just made it worse.
That's
like
terrifying.
I was banged up like a whole flight of stairs. Like from the first step on, I skipped a step and I just rolled down. And I landed against the door with my head. That was not a fun experience, but at least I can laugh it off now. I always had that fear of heights. I don't know where it came from. I also asked my parents recently when they visit me here in the States, and they say they don't know. It's just, I have it. I don't know why.
Oh, it could be that, heights are just absolutely terrifying.
I mean, that could be too. I mean, it was to a point where I wouldn't go beyond the first step on the ladder.
Oh, that really is a fear of heights.
Yeah, so I couldn't. I would get vertigo. And So vertigo is basically where you feel dizzy when you're looking down and you're really high and everything feels like looks small. Funny enough, it doesn't affect me when flying in a plane. I can just look down and be like, oh, look, there's a city. That's cool.
And you did your Christmas lights this year too, so you have exposured yourself beyond it.
I do, and that's why I say I'm not afraid anymore. I respect it now. How did I overcome it? There's this really cool place called Defy that opened here in West Palm Beach, and I had an annual membership. Defy is a trampoline place chain. I don't get any money, sadly, for advertising them, even though it's really cool. So they have places all over the country. They have maybe like 50 or 60 locations, and luckily they survived through the pandemic. So that's cool. I haven't really gone anymore, but that was definitely, and that was only like a year or two ago when I joined and really went there regularly, like every other day. And the cool thing is that because it was a trampoline place, like trampolines, they don't do anything except you land bad, right? Mm-hmm. But they had a thing where it's like a tower. Imagine like a diving tower with a giant safety mat, like a giant airbag. And I went to the highest level after I saw like a kid jump off there, like maybe like 14 years old, maybe 15, somewhere around there. And I saw him jump off there, like even making like a flip. And I'm like, me just standing there, I would be terrified to just jump down normally. How does he flip off there? Like, what? How is this possible? So I got really, really buddy with one of the employees over there. And one day he was like, because he knew like I was always avoiding that giant safety mat. He was like, hey, why didn't you try that? Like, see the guy, the kid? He comes here like all the time. Why didn't you just jump off like he does? Like just to see, how it feels. And I told him like, I'm terrified of falling. And he's like, well, nothing can happen. It's a giant airbag. So I went up there and I froze. I just could look down and be like, I'm not going to jump. No shit. I started like sweating. I started having this like heart racing. And it was like 20 minutes until that kid and the dude I got buddy with motivated me enough like to jump. And the best thing was about how they handled this, they didn't pressure me. They didn't start chanting, cheering or anything. They just be like, hey, take your time. It's safe. And we know you can do this. And it took me like 20 minutes. I was just standing there 20 minutes looking down this giant safety mat, sweating. And eventually I was like, F it, I'm gonna jump. And I did. And I thought I was gonna die in that moment. I didn't like it was like so weird. But then of course I landed, I got up and like they high-fived me. I'm like, yeah, it ain't so bad. So I went up again and jumped the second time. And I went up again and jumped the third time. Like without hesitation. And then about give it 2 weeks later, I started making forward flips from it. And then like you said, Adam, I put my Christmas lights up on my roof, along the roof. I got this giant ladder and was like, nobody else is gonna do this for me. I don't have the money to pay somebody, and I want to do it. I have a little boy. He's gonna look at me. He's gonna see me hang up the lights. I want him to be proud of me. So I grabbed this giant ladder, extended to the roof, went up there, and I clipped them in. And when I looked down from all the way up there to my little guy, I felt respect for the height. I wasn't afraid I was going to fall down. The ladder was securely in place, was well balanced, was a good ladder. It's a little giant for all those other fear-mongering people of heights. Like Little Giant is good. It's a good brand. And like ever since I can go up ladders. I just can. It's the weirdest thing ever. And I still get like the vertigo if I'm, let's say, very high up and I just look straight down. I still get that feeling and I get this, I am not well, like this unrest inside of me. But I'm not deadly afraid of it anymore. If I know it's safe, like if there was a giant airbag on the floor, it's like I could do the jump. And that's a very important skill if you would ever be in a burning building and hey, the only place out is jumping out of the window and the firefighters have a giant trampoline on the floor. You got to be able to do it, right?
Do they actually have those?
Yeah, they used to do that. You'll see they do kind of like large fabric sheets, and they do airbags as well.
No.
I've just never seen it.
Me neither in person, but I saw it on TV, so it must be real.
Exactly.
Darn it, I had something that I was going to say there, Mr. Andreas, and I can't remember what it was.
Well, that sucks.
I was going to ask you a question. Did you ever go to swimming pools in Germany?
Yes.
Do they have high dives?
Yes.
Did you do the high dives?
Once.
Okay.
And I thought I would die.
Okay. No, I'm asking because, obviously I've grown up in Florida, so that was just something that you always did. And I'm absolutely terrified of heights, but, jumping off a diving board, is not too hard, and at least for me. And you got to climb the ladder to get up there. So, I've always had a terrifying fear of heights, but ladders were okay.
The highest I jumped off was 3 meters, which I think is like 9 feet. I think like 9 or 10 feet. I think
That's a small one.
Yeah, I know, and that's as high as I would dare.
Oh, I thought that was the highest there was.
No, the highest I was at the swim park they had was like 10 meters, which would be about like 30 feet.
Oh, nice.
I saw other people jump off there doing like double flips, backwards flip, doing the handstand jump like they do at Olympics and stuff. Because there were some guys that were like in the swim team, but it's like I'm not even jumping off there normally.
No. It was either belly flop, cannonball, or can opener.
Yeah, my dad perfectioned this corkscrew. Like that always looked cool when he did that.
What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
Originally, if you would ask me before I got married or before I had kids, I would say self-fulfillment. But now it's that desire to not want my family be ever worried. Like, and I'm not saying that like, oh, I want to take all the worries away, but basic needs. I don't want them ever to worry if anything would happen. Like, are we gonna lose the house? Am I gonna lose my room? Am I going to have to sell like pawn shop like my gaming console or my toys? I don't want to have to be worried the fridge one day is gonna be empty. And some of those things come from my wife's experience. She's Cuban. She grew up when the USSR still was a thing, the Soviet Union, and Cuba, as a lot of people know, was like an ally to the Soviet Union, Cuba Missile Crisis, right? And she recalled to me more than once the scarring experience of the day after the Soviet Union collapsed. Like imagine like Walmart being full of groceries, right? Like it is every day, right? And now imagine from one day to the next, it's empty. No meat, no vegetables. You can't even get milk. You can barely get water and like canned food, if that even. That's what she went through. Like from one day to the next. The day the Soviet Union collapsed, everything was gone. The government took everything and kept it for themselves. It's like, I never want to have her that experience again. I don't want my children to go through that. And that was one thing always my dad kind of said whenever he got like angry. It's like, hey, at least be happy you have a secure roof over your heads. And that goes back to what I said earlier. It's like he wasn't much there because of his job. He works on a cargo ship, not like on the ocean, just up the river in Germany. So he was usually working Monday through Friday, like on the ship, living on there, and then come home like either late Friday or like early Saturday morning, and then spent with us like Saturday, Sunday. But most of the time he just wanted to relax anyway, so he did his thing. And or to chill with him, it was playing video games with him, which he was doing as a hobby, like Diablo 2 and stuff back in the good old days, or like, during the season, like watching Formula 1 for like 2-3 hours with him. And like one of the main things he always says, like that we should be grateful there's food in the fridge and a secure roof over our heads. funny enough, as far as I know, he never had a problem with his mother. His parent, like my grandparents from my dad's side, were basically divorced, and so my grandma basically raised him. And as far as I know, he never had that problem. So I don't know what got into his head that he honored and respected that a lot. Maybe something that my mom went through. I don't know, but I want to extend that to my family that I built now, because throughout all the years, like the financial crises and things I saw on TV, like my dad never like was at the risk of losing his job, getting a pay cut or anything. It's like we never stopped having everything we wanted. I mean, we always had a newest gaming console, some on launch day or some maybe like a month later. We always got like the brand new games and stuff, like as long as we were having good grades and stuff. And it's like I want that kind of financial freedom for my family, and that's really what's driving me. In especially being like single earning person in the household, because my wife is legally blind, so she's disabled. She can't really find a job. A lot of companies are very discriminatory against it, sadly, still, even though she's very smart and stuff. And even then, we decide she's gonna be a stay-at-home mom. And so in these times where a single salary barely would hold like any family over, I have that burden on my shoulders. I know like how much responsibility is on me. And so it's like, no, I gotta be the best I can be to support my family without relying on third parties.
I'll tell you what, man, that is, I think, what so many people in the world struggle with. It's that, it's like you said, weight of, you got all that weight and you've got to be the person who does it and find a way to overpower that. It's really cool to, to see you do that. Because obviously, I mean, you knew about your wife's condition and, it's something that you just embraced.
You gotta, if you really want something, you gotta figure it out. The old saying, if there's a will, there's a way, right?
Who were or are your role models and why?
Two people come to mind. Obviously, I mentioned him so much already. My dad. He always was that steadfast, I'm right and you're wrong kind of mentality. Sometimes to a degree where it was annoying. But he really is your straight up gold example of a typical family father, especially in a German family, of like, my word is the law and that's it. So far to where my mom was like, when she was like alone, because my dad was a lot on the ship, where she was like, well, you better do it or call your dad, like on the phone, like, oh shit, like, and you didn't want angry dad. You didn't want that at all. But that sense of authority he had, not just with us, but also at his job, like he was always like cream of the crop. To put in perspective, it was that working on that ship in that company. It's called Krieger GmbH, which is like think of LLC but in German. He worked there as a second job in his life. He started when he was like in his early 20s, and he's still working with the same company. He never changed it, and he never changed ship. Even when they offered him to get a better position on a different ship, he was like, nope, I'm staying on this ship. Because it was like his favorite based on like technicalities of the ship. Like he really likes it. And it's like the only ship that can, for example, turn on the spot. He still talks about that and is really, really amazed by that. Like he's like, no, this is the best ship in the fleet. I'm sticking on here. To put in perspective, he has been working there longer than anyone else, including the owners. So the owners retired and gave the business to their sons, and he basically outworked even them. He has been with that company so since his early 20s. He's like 60 something now, so for 40 years.
Oh my gosh, find a better ship captain of a vessel. 40 years under one machine on the same river.
Yeah. And the best thing about him is what he always says is like he the funny thing is one of my coworkers, David, actually met him, and one of my bosses, Bob, met him too, because like I love showing off my dad. I don't know why. And the way my coworker David described him was he's a man of man or something along the lines of that. Like he has like these pretty cool tattoos and stuff, and he's just really chill with guys. And he's like, no, he David said he's a guy's guy, which means like guys are just like, yeah, he's cool, like he's chill. And the weird thing is like when after like I moved out and my dad comes to visit, he's a different man to me. He is more to me like a fellow employee from my dad who's trying to guide me, because I guess he realized like I figured it out. I don't need his advice anymore. So now he's like my buddy. And it's really weird and funny. And he's just really good with people. Like people just like him because he's keeping it real. And one thing he does is on his ship, because since I moved out and my brother moved out, my mom pretty much lives with him on the ship. And so because of her experience and being on there, she counts as basically a fourth person on the ship. And if you're 4 basically work capable people on the ship, you can work other hours. And so he's totally using the system in his favor, all within the rules of the system, where he is like the only one in the entire fleet where he can get a delivery done within 5 days. Average is like, let's say 7 days, where it takes you from grabbing the goods to delivery point, and he gets it done every time in 5 days. That means every week, every delivery, he basically saves 2 days, right? So now multiply that times 50, like times the 52 weeks in a year. Like and the cool thing is the company gets, and he and the rest of the crew gets a bonus because they delivered early, because you get paid by the tonnage that you deliver and by how quick you deliver it. And so he totally leveraged the system. And the cool thing is, because he knows his ship, he knows he can overload it. Like he knows the exact tonnage. So let's say the ship is supposed to have 300 tons of whatever on it, like that's the load it can be. And he's like, no, we do 330. And even though it's overloaded, he just knows his ship. He knows the river because he's been on it for 40 years with that ship. And he never put a dent or scratch into the ship either. And like, so they deliver like with 10% more of tonnage. So the company gets paid more because they delivered more to the customer. And on top of that, 2 days faster than everybody else. So now everybody wants to work for him on his ship, on his crew, because like, yeah, we get fed as bonuses. You work your ass off under him. And I know it because he was my dad. And he pushed like schoolwork, like grades. You gotta be top. Like he pushed me always to be like top 5 in the class. And like he was probably like, as a role model, he showed me if you work your ass off and you come up with great ideas on how to utilize systems you're working within, and you earn your respect by doing the right thing, you're gonna make it. And I adopted that very strongly in life. At least I would like to think so. And then person number 2 would be a man named John Maeda, which I had the pleasure of meeting at WordCamp and being introduced to his work. He was actually the global design lead for Automatic, the company that makes and maintains primarily WordPress. And he apparently, without me knowing at the time, he's a huge influence on design. He even invented certain terms that I never heard about, but are apparently total normal in the design world. And one book he wrote is The Laws of Simplicity. And that was an eye-opening experience. I got the audiobook, and it wasn't him reading it, but somebody that sounds very similar to him, which I think was intentional. And the funny thing is, when I met him and like at WordCamp and I listened to his work and stuff like that, I told him afterwards, like we sat down for lunch at WordCamp, and I told him like, John, I think you're like my idol. I want to view the world similar as you. And he said, and now imagine this guy was at MIT and other stuff. Like he was a professor there. He's like total top design influencer. Like he even has like special LinkedIn tags and stuff like that. Worked at huge design companies. Does this annual report on the state of art, basically. And computational design is the term he coined. And like, so he's this really amazing man in so many eyes. And I told him like, hey, I think you're my idol. And he's like, no, don't do that. I'm not that great of a person. I'm like, what? And the more I read about him afterwards, I'm like, damn, this guy is a big shot. Like he is like he was working on technology at MIT in terms of like virtual reality and other stuff, like in the 90s. Like he got involved with certain startups where they were like, oh, this is brand new technology. And he's like, no, we did it at MIT like 20 years ago. And like, it's just funny how simple he looks at life. And I said, Loss of Simplicity, that book really, really affected me and my workflow process, and realizing that if you simplify the complex, everything becomes easier. And the best thing about it is it goes over on how to simplify. It tells you the rules, and it's universal applicable to anything from organizing your closet to your workflow. It describes everything you need to know. So those two people, my dad and John Maeda, are probably two of my, like, the two role models that I really enjoy following their advice and seeing really their actions and how it affects the people around them.
How did you come across him? Just from the WordCamp presentation?
Just that. He was for 2 years the director of design and kind of like inclusion also in for Automatic, the company. And that's how I first time heard about him. I gotta tell you, now that you bring him up in more detail, at the presentation, it was really amazing. Like there was like 5 minutes to spare. Like he was early. Most people, they get in early to get a seat. And there were like people sitting in the back. So there was about like, let's say 20 rows of seats. And like the people in the back, he was like, hey, you guys in the back, can you come forward? And also you guys in the middle, just all come forward. All come, like fill in the first 5 rows. And it's like, it's weird. And like we listened and we did it because he asked nicely. And he was like, and he gave us a reason. He was like, as I'm standing up here and giving my presentation, I would love to look you in your eyes and see how you react to the words coming out of my mouth, so I can adjust and say the things that you guys enjoy and can learn something from. But like back there and all the way, I have to squint my eyes and I can't really see your face. I would like to make this personal connection. Like he was upfront about it, and we're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. And everybody went to the front. Like that was amazing. And he was like the only presenter I've ever seen it do. And like I said, he gave a simple reason and we all listened and we're like, okay, cool. It's for our benefit, right? So we come up front, get closer to him. Like it's weird. Like how he clearly thinks unlike other people. And when I see people like that, I'm like, you probably can teach me something.
Yep, always good to keep an eye on people like that and try to get as close to them as possible. At least for, that osmosis of information.
Yeah.
What quality do you most admire in a woman?
Okay, I'm gonna change the question to what quality do I most admire in my wife for safety reasons. And I want to say perseverance, especially with today's age and like let's call it the age of Karen, with like these weird stigmas going on online and everybody being labeled more and more, especially more negatively. I see it hard for women to be like standing up for themselves. It's like they get simplified, similar to how men get simplified, but in a different way. women usually get, like as if they don't know things. Like it's weird. My wife has a bachelor in linguistics. She speaks 4 languages fluently, and of course, German ain't one of them. She speaks English, French, Spanish, and Japanese. And she graduated with a 4.0 from FAU, Florida Atlantic University. And she's really smart, and she's Cuban, so she ain't taking shit, right? That's like kind of the stigma that comes with Cuban people. Like, they're loud, they always want to be right. And the funny thing is, I feel like I'm good with like convincing people and like not manipulating them, but getting them in the right direction. And my wife her zodiac is Taurus, and she is stubborn as a bull. Like, she won't have it. And her Asian zodiac on top of that is a tiger. So she is temperament incarnate. Like, once you tip her over on like the aggressive scale, like she will become a raging inferno. But I love that about her, because she won't like back down. She is legally blind. Physically, she's not very strong, related to her glaucoma issues and her medication. That causes like lack of appetite. She can't really work out because her eyeballs would pop out of her sockets, stuff like that. So she's like fit, but not like muscular, not even, I wouldn't even call it athletic build. But and she's only like 5 foot, so she's not intimidating at all. But somehow that woman scares me more than some tall, muscular people. Like, she has just a temper and that fire in her that, like, I love that she can't stand up for herself, and she won't take shit. Like, once you say certain things, like, she's just like, no, I won't have it. You're gonna listen to me, and you're gonna agree with me, and we're gonna figure this out. And I love that about her. And at the same time, like, she's a totally caring wife and mother. Like, she has way more patience with the kid than I have, because I'm so used on negotiating with people, with adults, like, be it at work in the own team or with customers, being like, hey, look, we gotta figure something out here. And with toddlers, you can't reason. Like, you just can't bribe them with candy. That's about it. And my wife has this immense patience for him, and like, she seems always to have like the right response, or at least like, hey, Andreas, maybe you should try that. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. It's like, I admire women, and my wife in particular, that can stand up for themselves, and that, I don't know, have like a certain degree of wisdom. As a disclaimer, she's 7 years older than me, so she has a longer walk of life that I think helped me along the way on growing up and becoming more of a man. But yeah, women that can stand up for themselves, we need more of that, especially. The funny enough thing is, like, here in America, it seems a bigger issue than in Germany, which I think a big issue is that, I mean, point me to some women in leadership in America. It's hard to find somebody. And in Germany, meanwhile, it's like, yeah, for 12 years we had a female chancellor. Like, yeah, this is normal to us to have women lead us. Like, that's normal. Here in America, not so much. It's weird. I've seen it in other teams or heard from certain people where they had like a female manager, and they were like, oh, a woman can't lead. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, what? That make no sense.
Yeah. Sadly, not everybody's life experience has let them see out of what they normally experience. So they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Ironically, though, most women in a household run the household. The man is just the breadwinner. At least that's my perception. And of course, my walk of life. But even here, I see, like, in a lot of Latino families here in South Florida, it's like, it seems like the woman is pretty much like leading the household in terms of like activity planning, what should get done around the house and stuff like that. And even with a former boss, like that we have, it's like, it was always a joke, like, even though he's like leading the company and stuff, it was always his wife coming up with projects for him to do as soon as he retires and stuff like that. And it's like, it was like an inside joke. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's like kind of the American lifestyle. Like at a job, nobody wants to be led by a woman, but at the same time, it's normal in the household that like the woman makes decisions. It's this weird, what's the word? Not misconception, not paradox. That's the word, paradox. It's this weird paradox where, yeah, woman leading the household is normal, women at the workplace, not so much.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a certain amount of reason for that. A lot of women, once you become a mother, that becomes a focus of your life, So, I mean, it makes sense that you put that same care instead of into a job position, into your household, into your family. And that's a very, very important thing. It's something that we've lost in America. Too many kids are raised by daycare instead of, your parents, the people that should be raising you. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it really just, kind of speaks to just the fact that, it's one of those weird things that people, can't see that they're seeing already,
I gotta agree and interject here that since I dropped my kid off at like preschool right now, like I saw some parents that drop like babies off at the daycare. Like, I kid you not, like probably like 6 to 9 months old, because they were still like they still were being fed like the milk. They were still in the car seat. They didn't really have, because just for reference, my kid started walking on his first birthday.
Oh,
so
very
it's
cool.
about like 12 to 24 months is when they start walking around. And so it's like, I see kids being dropped off clearly in that age of like 6 to 12 months. And it's like, it's weird to me, because I would be like, and of course, every family's situation is different. It could be easily single parent. You don't really have a choice. It could be both parents need to be working. It could be, like, hey, the grandparents aren't around anymore, or maybe they live somewhere else. You don't have any family or friends that can take care of the baby. Like, it makes sense, but it's strange because like about 15 years ago, that would be like unheard of. Like, what? You're dropping a 6-month-old off at a daycare? What's wrong with you? And it's this weird shift towards like, where money becomes a higher priority for raising the young ones.
Well, it's an unfortunate reflection of, where the working class is, at least in America, to where it used to be. It's a good metric to show that, nobody wants to make that sacrifice. So why are people? It's necessity.
Yeah, I agree that is probably core of the issue.
What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or seen in your life?
Ooh, tough one. I would tie it a little bit into the whole overcoming with my fear of heights a little bit. But I would say, in all honesty, probably my first professional public speaking experience, which was at one of the WordCamps. I want to say 2017, 2018, something like that. And basically, I applied there. They had like a call for speakers, and they were like, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" So I applied, filled in the little Google form, and I didn't really expect like, "Oh, what do I know?" Right? And then they were like, "Hey, we need a lightning talk on this topic." I had submitted like 2 or 3 topics for the first WordCamp speaking engagement that I applied for. And of course, they picked my weak spot, which was related to PHP. And I barely had the basics down, but I kind of knew how to work with it inside of WordPress, making these actions and filter hooks work. And of course, they picked that instead of the other 2 topics I favored and was way more experienced in. And so they're like, "Oh, great. They picked my kryptonite. Like, that's fun." And it was a lightning talk, which made it only worse. Basically, they have like normal full sessions, which are like about an hour long. And then I have lightning talks, which are like 10 minutes really, and for like 5 minutes Q&A. And so it's like you really gotta sound like you know your stuff, because you gotta have to cram all this knowledge into 10 minutes. And of course I was like, yeah, no problem. Like, of course I gave you guys this topic to choose from what I can present. Of course I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm not gonna say no. And the thing is, why it felt like the most courageous thing I've done is it had to validate that I A, know my stuff, B, that I don't just fall apart in front of people, like sitting there. They're gonna judge me and my knowledge for the rest of my life, be like, oh, this is an idiot, or like, hey, this was actually good experience and I learned something. And so I want to say, like, my first professional speaker engagement, and of course that's volunteer based only, which is great about WordCamp. It's 100% volunteer based, and they pay everything like through the sponsors. Like, they pay like the venue. Some of the people they actually do fly in, like some of the high elite experts. But other than that, pretty much everything is volunteer based. And so, of course, I didn't get paid or anything. So that's why even more for me, it was like important to get this right. And there was strong peer pressure, because some of the people there, like just by default, I knew like they were in WordPress core development for like 10, 20 years. And so they know everything in and out. And it's like, you got to convince them, you know, your stuff. So that was probably like the bravest thing I did.
No, I like that. That's you're going to the conference where the guys in the audience built the systems and they know them in and out. That's pretty cool. So, how nervous were you before you did that?
It was nerve-wracking. I probably went through like my PowerPoint slides. I went through them probably revised them like 6 times, like the week before the WordCamp. And like, I was like, damn, because I was going to go with the humor route, because that was like the second WordCamp I went to. And then the first one, I learned a lot about bad speakers and good speakers. Mm-hmm. And the good ones were those with humor, and that actually made it fun and entertaining to watch and like keep your focus. And the bad ones were those that made it like a seminar style, mm-hmm. like as if you go to college and you listen to the most boring professor you have met in your life. And so I'm like, okay, all right, let's do this. I'm gonna do this fun. So I went to like one of the PowerPoint template sites, and I got the one with the cute little doggy. Like, don't ask me why, but like the dog, he had like his tongue sticking out and was cute and adorable. And like I started off being like, hey, we're going over, you know, these action and filter hooks. So for today, you can call me Captain Hook. And like I had the image of like Captain Hook from Peter Pan, like the Disney cartoon. And like it, like people start smiling, like laughing softly, and was like, okay, this is off to a good start. I got them relaxed. Now it's like I'm going the humor route, and it stuck. What I remember vividly is after the presentation, a young gentleman came up to me, immigrant, strong accent. I think his name was Idris, Idris, very, and the reason why I remember him is in the following WordCamps, I actually like met him again, like totally randomly without us organizing. It's just like we keep crossing paths when we keep going to WordCamp Miami. It's really strange and weird. But he walked up to me, is like, hey, this was like I struggled with this. I saw your presentation because I put actually code on there, and I said like, look, here's the link and everything else. It will be public on the WordCamp site afterwards, and it will have the templates and you can work with it. I put a practical example in there, and he's like, now I understand the logic behind the code. Like, I saw the code, but I didn't understand it. And I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And like that was amazing for me. It's like, look, even if there were 30 people and one guy walked away with it, he walked up to me and thanked me. Like, that's like, I won. It's like, I got one guy. Like, somebody walked away with something.
No, that's very cool. Did you kind of know going into it was going to be kind of a challenge that you were trying to overtake, Or was it just kind of something that came up when you realized that, the least likely of choice was the one presented?
When I prepared for the presentation, because I guess you're asking me more or less like how I handled.
Well, yeah, no, I'm
like,
just wondering
preparing
if you kind of like when you went into doing this going, well, look, this is going to be tough and I'm going to do it. I'm going to overcome this. Or was it one of those, you got into it and went, oh man.
it was one of those oh man things. And then I was like, okay, what's the best way to present this? Because the way the hooks and filters work and the PHP, how it interacts there, is very technical and it's hard to explain without an example. And I was like, I have to make this visually appealing. I have to give a practical example. And I made my personal mission. It's like when I give these presentations, I want somebody to walk away with something actionable. There's way too many presentations and from very smart people, they tell you a whole bunch of stuff and it's like, okay, how do I apply this now? So I'm like, here's example code. You can just copy paste it straight on your WordPress right now and see it change something. You can do it right now. Go to town. So first I was like, oh man. And then I was thinking for a week as I was like preparing for the presentation, like the initial week after I knew I was approved as a speaker, and was like, what am I gonna do? And I started Googling like, okay, I need hooks examples. And like I found a really, really cool one, which was like changing out the logo on the login screen. It has like usually the WordPress logo. I'm like, what if I wanted it to be my company logo, like as a company login, And it's like it was very simple from a code perspective. It's like, look, it uses the hooks. It's like, I can use that. So let me use that. And so it took me about a week thinking about how can I present it in a digestible and actionable fashion. And I'm glad I did find that way. And as I said, at least one guy walked away with like, I learned something, I understood something that gave me issues beforehand.
I love it. Tying back into your, into just, what was I trying to say?
Problem solving.
Problem solving. Yeah. Tying everything back into the problem solving. Exactly.
It's my personality. I can't fight it.
No, but that's really cool, right? Because, I always kind of say like, or my expression is, walk into the fire, like, the wave is coming into you, just lean into it and, just keep on moving. But, I like that problem solving. Like, there's a hurdle. We're going to overcome it. We're going to fix it. It for whatever reason, that word really works for me. So yeah, it's broad spectrum.
And then if you get to help someone along the way, it's even better, right? If you make someone else's day better, then just reaching that one person made it worth it. Like that's that's how I feel about this show. Like,
well, so, yeah. Not to tie back too much, but I really enjoy this. Just what you had said before about not focusing on the world because it's problem solving. But what problems can you solve? Solve the ones you can solve. It's kind of like, look, there might be war going on somewhere, on the other side of the world, but, ultimately, where's your garden? Where's your community? Where's your family? Start there, make that perfect. That's what you can control, and that means something.
Exactly.
Yeah. If only we all did that and didn't worry about everything else, things would be a whole lot better.
Well, that is fascinating that you say that because that's something recent experience at work is like sometimes it's not so much the issue that there are issues, but sometimes it's the focus of the individuals. Once you shift the focus and you make it very clear what the focus should be, things become easy. Like just realigning your focus. Really, what are you concentrating on? What are you spending your mental and physical energy on? And sometimes you just get a redirected energy into different channels in order to get the most value out of it and the best experience. It's kind of like, imagine you're doing a Disney trip, since we're here in Florida, right? Orlando's like, 3 hours away in a car. Imagine you're planning a Disney trip and you're kind of not planning for, you're going to be tired. Like, there is crazy people that do a Disney trip. They leave in the morning, let's say 6 a.m. They get there at 9:30. They do Disney all day, walking through the whole damn park, doing all these rides, standing in queue, doing all that. And then they leave at like 10 or 11 and drive back home to get home like at, like 2 a.m. It's like, in my head, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're planning this trip, like plan it out, take your time. And it's about the focus. Like, what is your focus here? If you're trying to crunch the entire park in one day, like, you're just focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on the park. But imagine how tired you're gonna be. I spent 3 hours driving back home in the middle of the night after you're tired. Like I would never do that because, like I explained earlier, what my driving force is my family. It's like I would not want to risk them that. And so it's like, focus. Like, you got to focus on what's important to you and in particular situations.
Yeah, well, I like that. It kind of scales up into the world. There's a saying that I heard recently, and I can't remember who said it, but it's kind of like the idea that, everybody is a tool. So don't let yourself get too worn. You don't want to let other people unnecessarily wear you. And the same thing, if you go and rush through that trip, if you rush through life and you're always tired and you're always exhausted, you're not really having the experience. You're not enjoying the ride. You went on every ride, but did you have time to think? Did you soak in the experience? Did you have laughter and fun along the way? I mean, I guess if you're stuck in a line, you have no choice, but, outside of that, but you know what I mean? There's, it's a different type of experience. And so, yeah, that's actually,
and it ties to even
good
like the
analog.
simple thing. And it ties into simple things in life. Like, are you eating slowly and enjoy your food? And like, do you actually taste it? Or are you just wolfing it down because you're hungry?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
mm-hmm.
like there is things like, if I go to a restaurant, I try to slow down because like I'm like efficient when it comes to eating. It's like, okay, there's food. I gotta go to my stomach and I'm done, Like, because especially I cook in the household too. So it's like, I know how it's going to taste. I cook it the same way every time. But like at restaurants, I try to slow down. It doesn't work often, but it's like, you got to cherish the experience. Like, because, like what's the difference between like a taco stand, for example, an authentic Mexican restaurant? Is like, if you order the tacos, you get like the same food, but the experience is different, and that affects the price tag. It's like you gotta respect the environment. I feel like whatever you're doing. For example, like you said with the Disney trip, like did you soak in the experience? Like, did you actually enjoy it? Did you have time to reflect it?
Kind of like if you do everything right. So it's kind of like if you eat ice cream, 3 times a week. Well, how are you going to feel as compared to what happens when you get really sick and you can't eat anything for a week or two and you're on like broth, and then you get to have a nice cold ice cream, on a summer day, maybe even, right? It's like, that's a completely different experience. You're not wolfing it down. You are concentrating on it.
You cherish it more. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of that, you can have all of the toys and do all of the things, but if you're not, enjoying the time and the space and what those things can allow, then, ultimately it's just notches on, a pole or a stick.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
All right, Mr. Andreas, question number 13. What does it mean to be a man in today's world?
That is the most difficult question, and I feel like that's why it's the last one. It really depends on your upbringing, I want to say. Like, and I guess that's the whole point of this podcast, right? It's like, if you ask somebody who comes from a poor family and is like the first kid to go to college of that family, it's gonna be a completely different definition. Look, I'm an immigrant from Germany. To me, being a man is pretty much like the personality and the archetype my dad is, which is, you are the cornerstone of the family, and you have to be like strong-willed, and I don't mean by that like kind of like overriding other people or like having to dominate them, like be it by title, by rank, mental or physical force, like respectable, being an expert in your field. I think what it means to be a man, especially me, 28 years old, that means I fall into this millennial category, which I hate that label, but it's a fact that you have to accept as part of life, right? I'm part of that generation, if I like it or not. And that is a very different definition of being a millennial man than being like the previous generation, which I believe is called Gen X. And the funny thing is, I see that gap, for example, to older people in like just like even being like 7 or 10 years older than me. It's weird that they behave very differently than people in my age group. And I believe being a man in this today's world is being more equal and being like it's harder to find a place, so to speak, because our generation was raised being tolerating towards almost everything. At least that's how I feel. Like even in Germany, like very early on, we were taught like, look, there's people of different upbringings, and I believe this ties back into the mistakes of Germany in like the 30s and the 40s, like the whole upbringing of Hitler, Nazi Germany, and all that stuff. And I think that's why it gets hammered into, like, especially German youth, of like, no, look, we are all equal. Like, it doesn't matter if somebody is Muslim, if they're Christian, if they're atheist, if they're Jewish, Hindu, or what it may be. Especially being part of the European Union, and have like being like the biggest economical force. We get a lot of immigrants from the European Union, a lot of Eastern Europeans, Spaniards from West Europe, Italians from South of Europe, even Scandinavians from Denmark, Norway, Finland, and so on. And so European countries are just such a mixed bag. It's like, okay, you're in France, of course you meet a lot of French people, but they're still like, hey, look, there's somebody from the Netherlands working here. Oh, look, there's some Germans migrated here. So we have a lot of mixed bags. Like when I was in school, like through like middle and high school, we had like 1 Albanian, 5 Turkish people, like from upbringing. They were all like German citizens, don't get me wrong, but like the upbringing, their family heritage, their ethnicity was like from different countries. And like, for example, one had like a French mom and a British dad, and yet they spoke fluent German with almost no accent. It's like, how did this happen? I don't know. But it's interesting that in Europe, just because of these different cultures, just living so in close proximity and without borders, that you just be like, yeah, it doesn't matter what you are, where you come from. And then here in America, it's like you have this whole mental shift of including more disabled people. Like accessibility becomes a bigger topic in designing buildings, designing websites, stuff like that. Of course, we have seen, especially in the last 3 years, a lot of movement of the LGBTQ community, even bigger companies making a stand for that, having Pride Month events, stuff like that. And like today's man needs to be more tolerable. What's at least the expectation of us, at least this younger generation. And I believe it's difficult to express yourself openly when we're just expected to accept everything. And in the meanwhile, it's like there's things that because of upbringing we can't. For example, I have a big issue with the idea of capitalism, which of course is at the heart of America, mostly because it's a system that worked in the past and now just became a tool for the rich to become richer and the poor to stay poor. Like people are, working their butts off for almost nothing. It's not a very fair system. especially if you look at, like a lot of the stimulus money that was made, like put out there for a lot of people that were struggling. And I think the statistics from like the IRS or whoever did that, maybe some other government agency, they did like surveys like, hey, how did you spend your stimulus check? And like 51% or something crazy like that said they invested some or the majority of the stimulus check. So it's like, wait a moment. So the people that were not struggling, or that maybe were lucky enough to keep working, they just took the money and put in the stock market or like cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or what it might be. And it's like, it's strange because if you understand anything about the basics of compound interest, it pretty much tells you if you invest pretty much any dollar into anything and you wait like 10 years, you're gonna make money. Even if you make like a bad choice, as long as like the company, whatever you invested in, didn't go to $0, you're going to have more money than before. So what does that mean for people that don't have like $1 left to invest, like in a month, in a year? So it's a broken system because everybody's like, oh, everybody can invest. Like, no, they can't. Some people can't afford to waste a single dollar. And so like the lack of, for example, mandatory pension funds causes you to see at Publix, at Walmart, people in their 60s working. Like it doesn't make sense. And I feel upset about that personally because like in Germany, I know like the employers are pretty much forced to pay like 50% of the healthcare. They pay for like the pension funds. It's like all built into like our tax system and corporate system, all complicated stuff. But there's like the thing called like the 5 pillars of Social Security, which is stuff like disability insurance, the pension insurance or retirement insurance. I forget what it might be called in English, and all these other things that basically are mandatory for anybody that works full time. So no matter what, you're gonna be fairly compensated and you're getting these other benefits because it's mandatory by the government. You're an employee full time, you're getting these things. So if you get injured on a job and you become permanently disabled, there was a fund for that you paid into and like the employer paid into as mandatory by law. So you're gonna be covered. Similar with health insurance and, as I mentioned, the pension, like the retirement. Like in Germany, you're 65 or 67 might be the current retirement age. Like you're basically not allowed to go to work unless you get like an authorization that you still can work, be it like, or you're the business owner. But if you like work for a company and there's no good reason why you should keep working, you're pretty much banned from working at the retirement age. Like they'd be like, no, you cannot work. You're 67. Like, no, that's not happening. And so I find it sad that in America, so much on retirement is based on the 401ks and other systems that are basically just investing money. And because you have control over that, you can F that up. And then you can end up from being in 50 years old, having $500,000 in your 401k, and then something really bad happens, like the stock market crashed when 9/11 happened, the 08-09 crisis, things out of your personal control, and they can shave your entire retirement fund in half. And it's insane to me that is even a possibility. So I find that our generation, the millennials, are learning more, being more informed, and realizing that the system is rigged to a degree. And I feel like that as our generation emerges as leaders and business owners, I feel like we're going to fight that more and more on a corporate level because we're like, this is stupid. And I hope that persists. But at the same time, we expect it to tolerate almost anything. So it's this weird duality of life where it's like we're not really supposed to speak up, but we're supposed to like endure. It's really strange because people speak up about certain things. Like you guys surely know about like the COVID vaccines, and you bring certain things up on Facebook or Twitter and you get banned. Like, so we're supposed to just tolerate your truth. I can't voice my opinion. But yet at the same time, for example, if there's an extremist that's like anti-LGBTQ, we can't like that targets them as a hate crime. Like we can't pin them on the wall and be like, this is like the Antichrist, basically. But at the same time, like other things, we just have to take and we can't speak up against it. It's this weird hypocrisy that's being dominated by a lot of old blood, as I call it, like the old news outlets, Facebook and stuff like that, World Health Organization, being manipulated by this older generation, this older mentality that persisted. And so it's like it's tough being millennial because all the social media, everybody analyzes you to the T. What is your opinion? People judge you based on that. And so we just have to be like, you know what? Everything is great. And we have to pretend like it's that. And in the meanwhile, on the inside, certain things eat you up. And you can't voice it openly without repercussions by either peers or, you know, like bigger forces like, well, now you can't write anything on Facebook for a week. Like you can't even post your kids' birthday pictures. Like, no, you're banned just because you brought up some random fact that we think is wrong. And so that's I think gonna be the challenge of our generation is how do we tolerate but also bring the change that's necessary to make society more fair?
Well, how do you get people back to the idea that, you know, an idea or a message or information, you know, stands on the merits of its truth or it falls under the ridicule of the failure of having truth in it. And it doesn't need to be hidden. You know, as soon as you start hiding things, you push them underground. You don't allow them to be exposed to the air, to be exposed to other things. And, you know, whether it's the left, the right, Democrat, Republican, pick your side, pick your topic. To me, I always want to talk to the person on the other side to get information on the other opinion, because sometimes I'll look at it and go, you know, I do see it your way, or I see a better way, or a way that I can get myself closer to where you're at. And I never would have done that if I refused to even address it. So to me, you know, I mean, if you want to sharpen a knife, you need to hone the stone. You got to rub it against something. You got to, you know, put some friction there. And, you know, if you don't do that, you're just going to end up with a dull blade that, you know, can't really cut anything. And I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent here.
I get what you're getting at. And that's why I find also funny, like, in America, socialism equals communism, right? Like that's the mindset because of like Cold War propaganda against the Soviet Union and Russia. Now it's like, yeah, like look, it's taking your freedoms and stuff. And if I'm like, in Germany, we can say whatever we want. Like it's when people bring up like socialism, everybody brings up bad things like Venezuela and other failed countries, but like people don't realize like, okay, what's the difference? For example, look at Nazi Germany and trying to sell that as, oh, this was socialism compared to Germany today. It's a complete different setting. And it's like, I just find funny the moment you bring up like socialism, people immediately get super defensive, especially in America, and become like they act like you dropped an F-bomb, like they get like flustered, aggressive and stuff.
Well,
like,
isn't it funny how everybody's got to have a team? You know, it's, you know, kind of in that same mentality that, oh, you're not on my team? Who are you?
Competition, right? It's the us versus them. And that's why the system, like, yeah, we all know that the system is flawed, right? And it's based on competition. And competition is the opposite of cooperation, which I think is the answer right there. Is like we need more cooperation.
Here's a good analogy I want to give you guys, and that's just my perception for a time. The way I see, for example, Germany and the European Union as a whole is it's like one big ship and everybody is doing their part to keep the ship floating. America is a flotilla of little ships and some are big ships. And the size of your ship is representing the wealth of the person or the influence, the power. and pretty much everybody's in a little boat and is making sure their boat doesn't sink and that their boat is the biggest in the neighborhood. And if they see somebody with a bigger boat, they want to try to bring that down. It's like crabs in a barrel. If one crab is starting to make it out of the barrel, the other crabs will pull that crab right back down. That's my analogy of that, of that mentality. And what I really believe, just from my upbringing in Germany, what we learned about American history, is the old saying that I wish we would remember again, not as a saying, but as a feeling: united we stand, divided we fall. And I love that saying. I love that saying more than anything else. Like when I first was like, you know what, I'm moving to America. I had to sell myself on this positive future, and I'm gonna go to this to this new country, like my ancestors before me when Germany fell apart. Like Einstein moved here, like very famous people, even before Nazi Germany, like people were like, oh my God, I need to nurture my family. I'm going to take this risk and opportunity in this new country. And so I felt like this pioneer spirit, right? And I had to sell myself on, and you know what? America is not full of idiots. America is great. The American dream, right? Everybody can become a millionaire. And it's like that saying, like I told that to myself. You know what? When I meet Americans, I'm going to be like, united we stand, divided we fall. And when I moved here and I started working here and I saw the undermining of each other, I'm like, what's happening here right now? I guess the news weren't wrong.
Oh my God, everybody's people.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we would go back, like America as a country, more towards that. We are in this together. And I said, not just as a farce, as a story, but as a feeling where, like a crisis happens and like the community can come together and really fix something.
It's hard to have any other feeling when the fear knob is ratcheted up to 11, 24/7, it seems like. So if we can get beyond that somehow, maybe like you were saying, ignoring bad news.
Yeah, and even though I love problem solving, that's one of those problems I haven't solved yet. Give me a couple years.
Now, Mr. Andreas, I have a bonus question for you. It's a new question. I'm very excited to ask this. Only asked it twice. This is going to be the second time.
Wow. I feel special.
No pressure. If you could give one sentence of advice to the future generations, what would it be?
Okay, so pretty much like, what would I tell my current, 4-year-old, basically? I mean, he's turning 4 years in like next week or so.
No more candy? Take your hands out of your mouth?
Like, what would I tell him once
Don't
he's
lick the cat.
comprehensible of taking my advice, right? Like, kind of like where I was when I was like 10 years old with my dad. Like, what would I tell pretty much like 10-year-old little kid? And next generation, wow. I guess I would try to tell them, like, to remember, like, you are, like, every generation, you are going to experience something that only you guys will understand, and try not to waste time fighting, and instead try to build a united vision. I'm saying that, like, it doesn't have to be the right thing. Can be very much the wrong thing, but the important part is move somewhere together. And I want to bring Nazi Germany up again. Before it went there, like in the early 30s, Hitler just became chancellor, and Germany was in ruins economically, and like everybody was poor because of all these reparations and everything else. Inflation hit and everything else. It was terrible, at least from what the history books tell me, and like grandparents from other kids and stuff like that. And what happened is, one of the biggest things to get Germans back working Germany was like, you know what? We are going to build the first major interstate, aka Autobahn. We are going to build the very first one in Europe. Like that thing was unheard of. Basically, like this major highway where cars can drive really fast from A to B. They were like, we're building this from here to Poland, and we're gonna pay for it. We're gonna put hundreds, if not thousands, of people to work. So, like it was amazing. People started buying tools, which means tool stores made money. They had to get heavy equipment. They had to buy raw resources, the concrete, the tar, everything to build these driveways and to construct like the bridges, the overpasses, and everything, right? And it put money in the economy into people's hands because like so many people were working, and it put Germany back on the track of like, look, we're in this together. We're building this amazing road, and a lot of people are gonna travel through it because like it's the fastest route from A to B. And of course, Germany built it into Poland. So Germany built the first Autobahn from, I don't know where the origin point is, into Poland, and I think through it too. Give it like 8 to 10 years later, and the Germans used that Autobahn to invade Poland and conquer it in 3 days. Irony, right? Like it was like really amazing at the time.
Or
but
advanced
like,
planning that just happened to work out.
Exactly. So it's like, as I said, like, was it the bad decision to build it, like for Poland to allow the Germans to build that? I mean, retrospect, yeah, it was.
Yeah, but
like,
there was also a reason that they were able to re-energize the economy through the industrialization of the military, through, you know, what's often lost to history as outside threats that kind of force them into a defensive attacking position. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a very nuanced situation, but I mean, yeah, it's.
The reason why I bring that example up is Germany was very divided at the time, being like they were blaming, like in World War I, they were blaming their own leadership because the Germans surrendered, like after they got dragged into it because of the Austrians.
Yeah.
Like that's how World War I started for Germany. It's like they got dragged in because they were allied to the Austrians, and they started the war because their prince Ferdinand get assassinated by guys from Yugoslavia, which is a country that doesn't even exist anymore. And so Germans were blaming, like a group of them were blaming the Yugoslavians for assassinating the prince. Other people were complaining that the Germans surrendered, we could have won, blah 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 blah. Some people were blaming the Austrians for being stupid and going to war and dragging us into it. And some of them were obviously blaming the French for obviously fighting us, even though we only had war with the Yugoslavians, and stuff like that. So everybody was blaming a different party. And then for the first time, when Hitler came up with his plan of his Labor Party and be like, look, we're going to put thousands of people to work, we're going to restart the economy, people loved that idea. And everybody got back on the same page. And I think, while of course, I'm not saying we need a dictator, but we need, again, to believe in someone who gets us back on the same page. And the US is so divided that it's going to be very difficult to find a person or a vision even that we can buy into. And so that's why I say to next generation, it's like, look, you guys, you can't change anything right now. But when you guys come of age, as you guys mature, you can change your community. You can start building a vision. So whatever you guys decide on, the earlier you can come up with a common vision and start planting that seed in your current generation. And as you guys take these seats in government, local, state, and federal, like that's when it comes together. It's like the Stoneman Douglas kids that when the shooting happened, and a lot of them wrote this letter of intent of like, I want to become a congressman to do gun control, to bring safety back to schools. And a lot of them are coming of age now where they can run for Congress, where they run for local governments. And it's like, see, those kids from that school had a really terrible experience, and they came together and were like, we want to change this. It doesn't matter who of us wins, on what level.
And don't even think that you need to get to that national level, because the greatest change you're going to have is in your community, in your town. that is where you have the most impact straight up to the federal level. Because once you get up to Congress, you're not changing the big picture. You're just a drop. But in your community, at your town council meeting, showing up, speaking up, that's how you change your world big time.
Exactly. But the what I'm getting at is like a lot of them want to get bigger, and maybe not all of them are going to make it. But if you take, let's say, 20 people, and all of them agree, we want to become political career to change this event that happened to us. Now, maybe 5 of them end up in local government. Maybe 5 of them end on a state level. Maybe 2 of them will make it to federal level. So now you have these people, these 20 people in this group that one way or another found a position in a political career in different positions, but they agree all on the thing. So now you have a change on local level, on a state level, on a federal level. Now you start having these seeds of a common vision on different spheres of existence, basically. And like that's what's important, is that you start building a vision on a low level that you can buy into, so it can become a higher level. So when that one person shows up, that's like, hey, the 20 of us decided like this is what we want as a vision. Let's build that. Because there will be one of those 20 might be strong enough, might be capable enough and popular enough to maybe become important enough as like maybe the House Speaker, as like a key senator, as maybe even the president, to start building that vision and really, really push that vision across the people. And while I believe the political system is so corrupt that a single voice can change it, that's why I'm saying I can only ask of the future generation, build a vision as soon as you can together. It does it doesn't have to be defined to the T, but just like imagine a world you want to live in and share that vision with other people. And the more people you find that agree with you, stick together. Like in, like Planet of the Apes with the sticks, apes together strong, right? Like that you gotta find people that agree with your vision, and you gotta build like that think tank. I think that's really what the next generation's main challenge is gonna be, is like find people that align with you and stick together with them. Like the internet is very powerful. It can be very toxic, with as all the social media, the censorships, and other things like this whole scrutiny of individuals and their opinion and the things they share. But at the same time, you have this unique tool where you can create think tanks without barriers, without distance restrictions. And if, let's say, you find 100 people that have a certain vision for America, and some of them are in California, some of them are in Colorado, some of them are in New York, some of them are in Florida, some of them are in Tennessee. The more different people in different areas you can get on the same track, the more likely that vision is going to happen one day.
So, Mr. Andreas, guess what?
What?
That was the end of the questions that we got for you.
Woo! That was good sailing.
Was it an experience?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially because my wife might chop my head off for being here 18 minutes over my bedtime. No biggie. She knew I was gonna be on here, so not a biggie. But no, I really enjoyed you guys' company, and giving me the opportunity to share some of the deeper philosophical values that I might have that you can't discuss with everybody every day. So I really appreciate having the time to really give my deepest thoughts, allow them to surface, and get with like-minded people, get it out there.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing and everything. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, and I didn't mention it before, but if you have any links that you want to send me for any projects, any work, any thing that you have out there that you want people to get directed to, LinkedIn profile, anything like that, I can always drop it in the show notes for you. Bake it in there for eternity.
Yeah, remember the Manhattan Project?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I was there for most of it.
Yeah, I didn't work on that.
All right, Mr. Andreas. Well, thank you so much for hanging out, for joining us. I mean, it was really, really cool getting to know you a little bit better. I probably strung this thing out longer than most people would like, but I loved it, and I'm sure they will too. So thank you for taking this.
You guys are welcome, and obviously for the listener, if they are curious about anything Germany or my philosophies, the best way probably is going to be in the show notes. I'm going to give you some points of contact, because I don't use social media much at all, because like I said, I'm trying to, block out a lot of what's ongoing in the world. So probably I'm just going to share my email there, and, I can be contacted that way. And it's just, I love having open discussions, and, one of the main things I learned from project management, everybody's opinion is valuable. And the funny thing is, like, some companies realize that more than others. And it's like, if the janitor has a good idea, he has a good idea, and then, maybe you come up with Doritos or something.
All right. I like it. Did not know that Doritos had a janitorial origin, but I will stick with that story.
I'm not 100% sure either. There's like this story about Lay's, one of the flavors or one of the chip types was supposedly invented by one of the janitors. Like, he was like, hey, why don't we do this? But I don't know if that's just like a myth story or if that's actually real.
I've heard that too. I think that might be true.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Guaranteed maybe.
Guaranteed maybe. I like that.
Well, yeah, thank you so much, Andreas. That was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy the rest of your morning.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you guys again for having me. This was a very pleasant experience, and I love the openness of the questions. And yeah.
Oh, and you know what? I should even mention this because I mentioned it on a podcast. You were the one that I gave Mattis's book, our previous guest, to. So you can let me know.
Oh, the
one that
the children's book.
Yes.
Well, it's not it's not a book for children.
No, it's a book about children.
Well, if your son or daughter is highly advanced, it might be. Here, read this. Fix yourself. Get back to me. I expect notes. All right, my friend, go to bed.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks again.
Good night.
I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what? I don't want no Hawaii. I don't want no Hawaii. Yo, what?
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians and use labels? Now that's racism.
Har jag wanna ha word. Har jag wanna ha word. Yo, har jag wanna ha word. Har jag wanna ha word. Yo, har jag wanna ha word. Har jag wanna ha word. Yo, har jag wanna ha word. Har jag wanna ha word. Yo,
Why is there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes. And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
har jag wanna ha word. Har jag wanna ha word. Yo, har jag wanna ha word. Har jag wanna ha word. Yo, har jag wanna ha word. Har jag wanna ha word. Yo, har jag wanna ha word. Har jag wanna ha word. Yo,
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.